In this video, we're going to go over some of the different ways we can set up projects to print in AutoCAD. So I have a little demo project here of just some wall framing for a building, so to frame out like a hole for a window and the studs and everything. So a little architecture project for this practice. So if you could remember from Module 3, when we went over tools and equipment, some of the things I talked about were a plotter, as well as different size sheets of paper. So realistically, if I'm making a architectural drawing, I can't print it out full size. So while I can draw everything full size, and I am 99% sure, but I did these drawings a while ago, but yes, I did. So I have this drawn as full size. Excuse the fact that I'm in the batting line type. But like this wall right here is 8 feet 9 inches wide from header to header at the top. Now realistically, I can't print an 8-foot wide drawing, and even furthermore, it's about 8 feet tall. I can't do that. I don't have a piece of paper large enough. Even if I use the largest sheet possible, I still don't have a printer or paper large enough to do that. So that's where things like drawing scales come in, where I can scale the drawing down. So this way, 8 feet on paper will be able to fit. And we usually will refer to those scales of how many inches on paper is equal to a foot in real life. So I can shrink this drawing down to fit on the page without necessarily having to use the scale tool, just using some of the printing settings. So I can do that directly here from Model Space. So there's a couple of different ways I can get to the print tool. One way is right here in your quick access toolbar. There's the button there for print, and just remember that in drafting we call printing plotting, because we have to have a fancy word for everything so we can feel superior to everyone. But I can click on the print button there. If I click on the big red A, we have our print button here. And then I could also use the keyboard shortcut, either use the shortcut plot. So if I type in the word plot, it'll bring that up. My cursor is unfortunately behind that keyboard. Or I can hold down Control and hit the P key, and that'll open up the print menu. All 4 of those will get me to the exact same place. Typically, I'll use this printer button right up here because it's the easiest way to bring this up. So in here, it's telling me that we're going to print out of Model Space, and then I can choose the name of a printer. As a student, you're not going to have lots of these printers set up that I have because I'm currently on one of the school computers, and so I have access to some of the school printers, as well as some of the printers I have in my classroom. So I have access to my 24-inch plotter, so I could print it out on a sheet of architectural paper. I have access to just my plain 8.5 by 11 printer. A lot of times what I'll do is this DWG, I'll do this DWG to PDF, which will print it out as a PDF document, so that way I'll have kind of a backup electronic paper copy. I know it's a little hard to grasp. Sometimes I'll even print it to a picture. So if I'm doing something more towards like a graphic design style project, I might print it as just a JPEG or send it to a JPEG. Because I'm so comfortable using AutoCAD, as just a little kind of side tangent, I like AutoCAD so much and I'm so comfortable with the software. Sometimes I'll design tattoos that I get. I'll design them in AutoCAD and I'll print them out as PDF or as JPEGs to give to the tattoo artist and things like that. So you can do a couple of different things with it. I'll just set it as DWG to PDF for now. And then right here is where you can change your paper size. So you can change what size paper it's going on. So I can choose some of those architecture size E or D sheets. We've got all of those different architecture sizes that we went over in Module 3, as well as just some of the more standard sizes. So we could see that it was currently set to just the ANSI size A, which is an 8.5 by 11. And we can change it to be an 11 by 8.5 if we want to. We could do that in here or here with our drawing orientation. So for instance, on your certification test, they might ask you to change your paper to a specific size, and they'll tell you exactly the size they want it to be set to. So I'll put it on like a sheet of tabloid paper just for fun. And then we have what it wants us to plot. So display just says print directly what I have on screen right now. Extents would print all of model space currently. Limits would print whatever we set the limits to. So we can set our drawing limits to say only print from, coordinate 0, 0 to coordinate 100, 100. And then that could be just the limits of our drawing, and we could print to those limits. I didn't set any limits in this drawing, and as far as I know, you guys haven't set any limits since I never spoke about limits before right now. But a lot of times what I'll do if I'm printing from model space is I'll do this window option. And what that'll do is it'll allow me to window around a specific part of a drawing I may want. So I'll just click up in the top corner, click in the bottom corner, and we can see here that this changed. So now instead of it just printing a whole sheet, it's just printing that small square onto this sheet. And then I can say I want it centered. And then by default, it's just going to print it as large as it can on this sheet of 11 by 17 paper. And so with this checked off to fit to paper, it's saying that every inch on paper is equal to 11.22 inches in real life. I can uncheck that if I want to, and I can set it to a specific scale. So this is where I could say I want, every inch on paper to be a foot in real life. And that means that if it prints, it'll print at that scale. Typically, I'd have that also noted in the title block, but I'm just printing something from model space. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll set up things like this with these little houses and walls, and I'll print them out at a scale of 3/4 of an inch equals a foot, and we can see how that shrunk. And then I can use these as just templates for when making little architectural models of the structure and things like that. So that's where that scale can come in handy. However, what I've seen, and I'll just click on cancel, in some of the practice problems is they've asked students to open up plot, and they've asked them to, change the paper size to be, I'll just say postcard for this. And then they want to know, when you change the paper size, what did this plot scale unit change to? They want to know, what did the scale change to based on that paper size? Because we can see here that if I switch this now to, I'll switch it to 11 by 17, we can see that that scale changed as well. So you will maybe have a question related to that, maybe not. If they want you to switch into what's called paper space, they will for sure tell you to do so. So now let's take a look at what we call paper space. So in a completely blank drawing, or really any drawing, paper space is right down here in this layout 1 tab. And this is essentially a sheet of paper with a viewport into model space that we can use and lay out. So I can see here that I have a completely, or just a blank drawing here with no settings set up. And if I go into layout 1, we have here set up with a little viewport that I can click in and out of. So to get into the viewport, we'll just double click, and now I have that viewport into model space active. So I can zoom, I can hold my scroll wheel and pan, I can do everything just like I would in model space. I can even click on objects in here, and I'll hit the delete key on my keyboard to delete it. Unless, do I have it frozen? There we go, to delete it. And then if I go back into model space here, I can see that it is gone. So any changes I make in the viewport in paper space will get changed in model space as well. I can set my viewport here to a specific scale. So I can come down here in my settings, And I can change it to be, 1 to 2, which would be 1 inch on paper is 2 inches in real life. And I can pan it to be a specific size. Or if I was doing an architectural drawing, I can use one of these scales here. How many inches is equal to a foot. So these are for architectural drawings, and then these are for engineering style drawings. But it's always, for engineering drawings, it's always for how many inches on paper is equal, or how many inches on paper is equal to inches in real life. So 1 inch on paper is 4 inches in real life, meaning that the drawing is a quarter of its original size. 4 inches on paper is equal to 1 inch in real life, means that this drawing has been enlarged quite significantly. So these would be zooming in, versus these are then shrinking or zooming out. And then when it comes to architectural drawings, it's how many inches on paper is equal to a foot in reality, because architectural drawings are usually much more larger than engineering style drawings. Now, to get out of this viewport, what I'll have to do is just double click outside of it to get out. The other way to switch between model space viewport and paper space is right down here. So if I click on the word paper, we can see that it switched me over into model, and that's why this now is highlighted. And if I click on the word model, it's now switched me over into paper. The other way to do it is to use the keyboard shortcuts, which are M, S, enter, that is model space, and PS, enter, is paper space. So a lot of times what we'll do is, and let's see if we have one preset up. So if I go into this one and I go into layout 1, it doesn't look like this one got preset up. Kind of, a little bit. So this one has like a title block associated with it, and it has a viewport where we can see our drawing, but it's just really small, and I can double click in my viewport unless they've locked it. I don't know, I didn't set this one up, so it might be locked. Don't know why it also says that I'm currently holding the S key. There we go. Let's just do this in a drawing that I did. So we can set up our viewport, we can set up our specific scale for it if we want to. So I can say that I want a scale of 3/4 of an inch is equal to a foot. I can zoom in on the area that I want and pan on the area I want. Double click outside of it to get it where it's no longer active. I can also click on the edge of this viewport and change the size of it. So if I wanted it to be larger or smaller. And then I can go into print. And when I go to print, again, I can set my printer name. I can change my paper size. And in paper space, something like this, I would just want to plot the layout itself, because I already have everything laid out in my drawing in this paper space. If I click on preview, it gives me a little preview of what the drawing will look like on the page. And maybe I say, well, I don't want this viewport, this edge here, to print out. I'd rather that not be on this piece of paper. So I'll just hit escape and I'll X out of this print. And I'll click on the viewport and I'll say, okay, well, it's in layer 0 and I'll need to change it. So I only have this one layer called 0. And so in this scenario, I'll go into my layer properties. I'll make a new one, and I'm not going to change anything associated with it for this instance, except the fact that I just don't want this new layer to print. So I'll just click on that to say don't print out. I'll close it. I'll click on this viewport and change it to this layer 1. So in my drawing here in paper space, things really don't look all too different. Nothing really looks like it changed. But now if I go to the print option and I go to click on preview down here. I know it's behind that keyboard, but I'll click on the preview button. I don't see that viewport box. So this can be really helpful and beneficial for setting up just various views on drawings, or like I've mentioned before, if I had guide work that I didn't want showing up, I can keep all of it there and just set it in a layer that doesn't print out, whether it's the def point layer or whether it's just a layer I make myself that I say don't print. And now I could print this out and use it as a guide for when I'm cutting out and making my little model. Another thing that I mentioned in the past that I'll just show a little bit now as well are these things here called color plot tables. So I mentioned in architectural drawings we tend to use lots of different colors and then just associate those colors with line weights rather than assigning line weights to our drawings. And that can be done using what's called a color plot table. So I can have it where it just prints my drawing in grayscale or prints my drawing just in black and white. Or I can set up my own custom plot table. So here's one that I've set up for a different course. And if I go look at it, it's essentially saying anytime you see a red line, print it with a line weight of 6. Anytime you see a yellow line, print it with a line weight of 0.4. Anytime you see a green, line weight of 0.3. So those different colors in that drawing would all still get printed black, because we can see here all of these colors are set to don't print it in red, print it in black. Don't print it in yellow, print it in black, but give it this line weight. Don't print in magenta, print black, but use this line weight. And I've only done that for some of them. And then for a lot of the colors, it just is to use the object color, which means that these colors are not really getting used in my drawing at all. And so this is just a different way that I can make it a little easier for me to view the drawing in AutoCAD, but then print it out, still following the ANSI and ISO and the AIA, the American Institute of Architects. I can still follow all of their standards when it comes to drawings when I print it. That's a little advanced for this particular course, but just something that you can do and use. And so that's how to set up printing. So for your assignment, for this one, I'm just going to have a couple of problems set up as a quiz again, where I might ask you to just kind of refer to some of these settings, maybe a couple of practices from the certification. And of course, if you have any questions, you can refer back to this video or send me an email and I'll be glad to help.